Hello, and welcome to BCA's 2022 midterm election coverage. I'm with my co-host, Steve Thomasy, and I'm Willie Wilson Jr. We plan to have our host, Corey Dolgan, with us tonight, but unfortunately, he's under the weather. We wish Corey a speedy recovery. Tonight, we plan to share the results as they come in from the precincts. While the votes are being tabulated, Steve and I will provide some background on the races and do our best to keep you informed with the numbers.
We have plenty to talk about tonight. You're probably aware, everyone's aware, that this election is one of the most important ones in American history. We're history teachers, so we say that about so many different things, and each new thing becomes important. In national races, they're going to be going for days, they say. Counting in Philadelphia, I heard before I came in, might be 4 days before they come up. Here in Massachusetts, however, we don't expect to have anything like that. And it's a pretty quiet election, we believe. And so we're going to talk about the things that happen. There may be surprises, but they would be big surprises. Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And also what Steve just mentioned, the reason for those delays with the national races is due to a lot of the early voting. So those ballots are tabulated separately, and then as opposed to the votes that come in during today. So and like we've seen in previous, thank you. Like we've seen in previous races, it takes time for all of those to be tabulated.
So, without further ado, I think we should start going into the races that we're going to be looking for numbers for tonight. So the first thing, Willie will introduce the candidates for the statewide offices, the constitutional offices. There's 6 of those, and he'll be talking about this, but this is the most notable thing, I think, at the end of tonight will be about how this would be, maybe call it the year of the woman, that there's been a big transition to having women in Massachusetts take over the major spots, almost all of them, we think, tonight, beginning with Governor-to-be, I believe, Maura Healey.
Thank you. And so we have in the governor's race, Maura Healey, who is running opposed to Jeff Deal. The lieutenant governor, we have Karen Driscoll, and we have for running for attorney general, Adrian Campbell, and treasurer Deborah Goldberg, who is running unopposed. And then we have for auditor, DeZaglio, who is running against Mr. Amore, who is the only candidate that the current governor, Governor Baker, endorsed in this race statewide, the only candidate he endorsed. And then we have for Secretary of State, we have Bill Gavin, who is current Secretary of State, and he is running against as you can see on your screen, Rayla. It's Rayla.
Rayla Campbell, right.
And as you can, and then we have Juan Sanchez, who is also, now, I was surprised because I thought it was only 2, but I didn't remember that Mr. Sanchez was added to the roster.
Well, largely I was unaware of this too, and they put together this really nice book for us, and there are candidates from Green Party, Workers' Party, Libertarian Party that we don't hear about, and if they have to get a certain amount of signatures to get on the ballot, but they don't have the money to advertise, so you're unaware. Maybe their families are aware, but you're unaware of their presence because they don't do advertising. So the people that you could name tonight, and that's an interesting thing. So Kim Driscoll is the mayor of Salem, longtime mayor of Salem. She's once a year would get a lot of publicity because of the Halloween activities in Salem, so she'd be on TV a lot. But she's a close ally of Maura Healey. I think it's interesting, Maura Healey's more famous for her basketball exploits because after college she went and played professionally for a couple of years in Europe. Kim Driscoll, however, was apparently an accomplished basketball player in her high school and college days, so, but less famously so. But it's, I think it's very interesting that both of them, if you ever see them talk or interact, are really very competitive people. And I think this goes down to the fact that they had spent a lot of time in athletics, where you go into the game to win the game. That's you're there. So I think that, and they seem to be very well matched. Occasionally you have a situation where the lieutenant governor and the governor are not really on the same page, and the lieutenant governor is just kind of sent out there to do something every once in a while. But here, I think that two of them will work closely based on personal, mutual admiration. So that the expectation is that they're going to win by large numbers. It's a trivia question. The woman who's the lieutenant governor is a woman named Leah Cole Allen, and she's running with Jeff Deal. If I had to tell you what I knew about her, is that she had been a nurse, and I believe she lost her job for refusing to be vaccinated.
That's correct.
Back at the time. So that's, if I had to say something about her, it would be only that. Yeah, you all see Jeff Deal because he has had a good amount of advertising and television time and was in 2, I think, televised debates that I saw, at least, with Maura Healey.
And he's local, from Whitman.
That's right. People here would have been talking about it. This is slightly off the topic, but I've watched Jeff Deal for a while. I personally go door to door for a lot of campaigns, year after year. Back to George McGovern in '72. But one of the most impressively organized campaigns that I ever worked for was Mike Brady's first time running for the state Senate seat. He was a state rep obviously from Brockton, and Deal is a state rep from Whitman. And Tom Kennedy dies, so the state senator position is open, and these two guys are essentially of equal stature when they run. Brady's campaign that time was the most well-organized campaign. It was tons of workers. It was just kind of really impressive, and I wish I knew the exact numbers, but it wasn't even close. And then Jeff Deal went on to run against a real star, Elizabeth Warren, and that wasn't close either. And now he's going for the latest Democratic star, who is, in the state at least, Maura Healey, and I expect he has the same thing. So he must not enjoy the losing, but he must enjoy, the public attention that he gets during this period of time.
Now, it's interesting that you should say that, because today, if you heard him on TV, he, of course, we're looking toward a victory.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And you have to have that, I guess, that hope in terms of running. It is the year of the woman. We mentioned Healey, Driscoll, Andrea Campbell. We have Deb Goldberg, DeZaglio. So we have the possibility, and the numbers will be coming in, and we'll be sharing those with our listeners. I also want to get to those 4 ballot questions that are really, really. Some analysts said that's what's driven several people to the polls, scores, in fact, as opposed to the individuals. We have the ballot question number 1. which says would add an additional 4% state income tax on those who make over $1 million a year, with the funds from this tax going toward public education and transportation. And again, like you and many others in the Commonwealth, all 351 cities and towns, we've been overrun with the TV ads. And so there's the yes vote and the no vote. The second ballot question, which is deals with, excuse me, dental insurance. It would require that dental insurance carriers use a minimum of 83% of annual payments from covered persons or groups on medical expenses only. And it's interesting because the governor said he had some questions. Governor Baker said he had some questions with this, and he feels that maybe it could be tweaked. And I know we did a program a couple of years back. We did the ballot questions for 2020.
Right.
You and I, and I don't know if Corey was with us.
No.
But a lot of times when these ballot questions are passed, there is some tweaking that needs to be done afterwards to make sure that they do what the people had intended them to do.
Yeah, the state legislature does get to weigh in on this in various ways. One of the arguments of the opposition to question 1 is that in all the advertising for question 1, you see that they say that the money is guaranteed by the wording to go to schools and public transportation. But the opponents say that, in fact, that money could directly go to those things, but the state legislature could withdraw the similar amount of money from those accounts separately and spend it the way they want. So on many of these ballot questions, you might remember the fight over the lowering of the state income tax. And it was passed years ago, and the state legislature engaged in various machinations, which I agreed with, by the way, but in order to delay the implementation of that. So the fact that this, if they argue that the state legislature will get its fingers into this pot, it's likely true. That may not be a good argument to vote against it.
Right. Good. I do want to bring up the other two. Ballot question number 3, the liquor license expansion.
Yeah, I just while we're waiting for that, this is a very interesting one because all the polling indicates that this is going to pass by a very large margin, and all of the money of the advertising has been in favor of yes on question 3. In fact, there has been, I heard some really small number, like $2,000 spent on opposition to this.
In terms of the
yeah, and so if you see any advertising on TV, it's all for this yes. And analysts are saying that it really doesn't make any difference. It's really arcane about, I mean, look at this. The amount of alcohol licenses any retailer is held to 7 all alcoholic beverages, and it talks about different rules on different types of stores. So if you sell food along with your alcohol, you have one set of rules. If you're only a liquor store, you have another set of rules, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. If you vote no, it just means that we're going to keep the things the way they are.
Right.
Well, what is the way they are? I don't really know. So I was trying to decide on this whether or not I should vote yes or no, because I try to vote on all of these. And the decision making for me was there are small liquor stores that I buy liquor, mom and pop type things that only sell small ones, 3 of them in the city that I go to. And they all have signs on them saying vote yes on this. Mm-hmm. And the big places like Total Wine, maybe Blanchard's, are against this, but they're not putting a lot of money into it.
Right.
So, and analysts that I watch, like on Channel 2, are saying it really doesn't make any difference to we, the consumers.
Right.
The consumers are not going to be, it doesn't affect prices.
Right.
It only affects who can own how many liquor stores.
Liquor stores, okay.
So that's not a big one. The dental one, which we kind of passed over very quickly, but you mentioned the Charlie Bakers for it. The argument to vote for it is that your other medical costs from your health insurance that you get through work, or maybe Medicare, or whatever it is, those all have specific number requirements that the insurer has to spend, like
on the issue.
On the thing, right.
And so this bill actually asks for 83%.
Right, is spent on that. And so, the people who are voting yes saying, why doesn't dental have a requirement like all of the other medical things that are covered by you? And of course, the other people are saying that it's more complicated than that. That's basically their argument. And so Baker's taking that position. I assume, I'm not a big Baker fan, but I assume it's because he's showing some of his pro-business bona fides here.
Right, and also his experience in the healthcare industry
prior
to becoming governor.
Yeah, he's always made that argument, and I don't see us having really been advantaged in terms of healthcare during the 8 years he was there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was always selling himself as the manager and go try to ride the T. They don't address it until he's got like 5 months left in his term. So yeah, that's another thing.
All right, now,
and then there's question 4.
Now that's where we wanted, and 4 is a doozy. Now this one has there are several states. This is question 4. Would keep in place the law that allows Massachusetts residents who cannot provide proof of lawful presence in the United States to obtain a driver's license or permit after a past permit or license test. Now, this is a live wire. And what, as I was reading and looking at some of the data, of course, this is based on the 10th Amendment. This is how states address this. It's through the 10th Amendment that they actually pass laws that will allow undocumented people to do this. Now, there are several states, not just Massachusetts.
17 states.
Yeah, right.
Allow. Now, when it talks about here, if you apply for the driver's license, you have to show documentation. And it has to be valid documentation. So people aren't like just coming in off the streets and saying, giving me a driver's license. They have to, for example, show their passport. And they have to show, like, for example, where they work. And they have to show other valid things like bills from their address. And so it's not like they're just walking in and asking for this. They have to show documentation. Now, it's not the same documentation that so-called legal or, documented aliens have. So, for example, Willie and I both teach at the Adult Learning Center. Some of Willie's students are green card holders, some are not. So the ones that he has that are not would be covered by this law. The course that I teach is preparation for citizenship. So all of my students already have green cards and are eligible for citizenship. Now, the ones who are eligible for citizenship with the green cards can go and they get driver's license, right? Some of the people are saying, like Baker, that these people are going to use these licenses to register or to try to vote. And, it's absurd on the face of it because the green card holders that I teach, none of them are using their licenses that they got legally because they had a green card in order to vote. That's not their motivation
Well, here's
at all.
Well, here's the point. In the other 17 states, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Colorado, California, this hasn't been the case. So that's why I was a little disappointed that Governor Baker would use that as an excuse. Secretary Galvin, at the same time, said this is preposterous. There are 17 other states. And what is very interesting about this is that when I went and I did some research on from the National Association of State Legislatures, and the states issue driver's license under the constitutional authority of the 10th Amendment, which says that if something is not identified in the Constitution, the federal government does not have a right to regulate, and therefore the states can do this. And so, and the pros from some of the insurance people that I've spoken to have said that that actually it's a result of the insurance will go down. It's just good to have these drivers who may drive illegally to have them licensed and so forth. And they say it's a win-win. I see it's time for a break, and we'll be back in 5
minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is where you rise, this is where you shine, this is where you become the greatest of all time. History in the making. This is history in the making. History in the making.
Vote for your life.
You're watching the 2022 midterm election special by BCA. I'm your host, Willie Wilson Jr., and I'm joined by my co-host, Steve Thomasy. We've been talking about the midterm elections and how the results will impact the city, state, and country. I'm glad that you've decided to share your evening with us for this exciting time during the results.
So we think that we should go now to talk about local races. That is, races that are specific to Brockton voters, right? So we can begin with the state rep races. Here or the state legislature races for people who live in Brockton. So we here in Brockton have 4 representatives who go to the State House and, try to represent our interests. So one of them that's running today, and I actually live in this district, Jerry Cassidy, who has been, I believe, he's running for his 5th term as state rep. He's running against Larry Novak. This is, to be frank, not really a competitive race. Larry Novak actually has been convicted of, federal charges, and I believe he's been in prison. And I asked about this. Is it like, if you're been convicted of a felony, you have to have your voting rights restored. Nobody I talked to knows if he had his voting right restored, but apparently you can run for office even if you don't have the legal right to vote. I mean, James Michael Curley, running for mayor from prison is the most famous example of that. So Larry Novak, who was for a long time, I think I don't know if it's still true, he was the chair of the Republican Party here in Brockton. And so he does have names.
Also, he was served as a school committee man at one time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that was before my time.
Yeah.
Jerry Cassidy has a slightly different district than he had for the last 10 years. 10 years ago, after the 2010 census, Jerry Cassidy was put into a district in Brockton that was a majority-minority district. And when those are created, the expectation is that at some point, a non-white person, what's known as minority, will get elected. However, he was never really had a strong challenge and held that position. After the 2020 election, there's been more redistricting, and his district has changed. So he is not in a majority-minority district anymore. He has essentially, like I live in sort of the south side of Brockton that way, and then he has places in the Bridgewaters also. So his district is different than it has been. This is a new one. I don't think it'll affect. He's pretty popular and is known as a person who, I guess you can use the phrase, brings home the bacon for the residents of Brockton. So I don't think he has much of a
When you say
residue.
brings home the bacon, I think very effective. I mean, and we're going to talk about Brady and others, but they're very effective. He listens to his constituents. He responds to calls, emails, and I encourage all viewers to go to their websites, very, very good websites, and to contact, and just to have it. You're a citizen of Brockton. These are your representatives. Don't go by what I say or Steve says. In our opinion, they've been very effective and they're very responsive. But if you look at the vote results, I think most citizens agree when you see, as we're going to do this evening. But bring home the bacon is a slang term in terms of being effective in trying to do what is best for the district.
Yeah, and I just want to say the bring home the bacon is you bring back money to your district. If people need money to accomplish tasks, whether it's building schools or putting up new housing or fixing train stations or something like this, state money, is going to come to districts who have effective state legislatures who are able to bring home the bacon, so to speak. Here we have Michelle Dubois, the state rep. Now, she's also actually has benefited, I think, to the creation of the new districts after the 2020 census. Prior to this, she had a district on the east side of Brockton, but it also included a lot of West Bridgewater and a couple of, in fact, maybe most of West Bridgewater, and even a couple of wards in West Bridgewater and East Bridgewater. So she had other places. Now she has an entirely Brockton district, and this is to her advantage because she's been around. She was a city councilor here, and everybody in the east side of Brockton knows who she is. So she was advantaged by the new redistricting, and I think it shows that no one ran against her in the primary, and she has no opponent in the general election. And I'm not exactly sure why that is, if she's considered that formidable, but the fact is that she doesn't. Which gives me a chance to bring up what I consider to be somewhat, rather negative statistic. I had heard on National Public Radio that Brockton had the lowest percentage of opposed state legislators of any state in the Union. And so I looked up the other night to verify this. There are 160 state representatives in Massachusetts. They represent about 40,000 people. So these are very small, chunks of territory. Well, at least number of people. Of that 160 today, they all have to run every 2 years. 109 of them do not have an opponent. That's an amazing number. We have 40 state senators, so that'll be about 4 times the size of a state rep district, and 18 of them do not. So that's a better percentage. That means, 22 do have. But this is, as a total, 64% of our state legislators do not even have an opponent, in a democratic process. And you can talk about that, but it seems like you would want it to be better than that.
Oh, now, before you go on, could you explain to our viewers, in terms of the redistricting, how that came about and the reasons?
Well, okay.
Based on the census.
Yeah, this is the case. So every 10 years there's the national census. And districts or political entities, large and small, are their voting districts are reconfigured. So there are state representatives, U.S. representatives such as Stephen Lynch, who's running today against a virtually unknown person. But so Stephen Lynch, his district will change after the census. That is, different towns he'll cover than last time. It won't be a big thing. It's always around the edges of the district. But it's called gerrymandering. You can create districts that are beneficial to some predetermined outcome. So when every 10 years also after that census, the legislative districts within every state are altered. So after this time, all of our state legislators, Mike Brady is the state senator, Michelle Dubois, Jerry Cassidy, and then a brand new district was created, right? A majority-minority district that Rita Mendez won the Democratic primary, and she's running against a candidate who's asking for write-ins. So statistically, he has a really tiny chance of winning, right? She's in a district that didn't exist during the last 10 years. Now, we do have the first return of the night, and she has 810 votes, and there were 56 write-ins.
Right.
Now, the write-in candidate is Fred Fontaine. So if this is a local program, you probably know Fred Fontaine. He has a place called The Perfect Place down on the south side, and he's a pretty well-known person in the city. And he chose not to run in the primary as a Democrat against against Rita and Shirley Azak, and decided to run a sticker campaign. During that campaign, he got, I think, 126 votes. Today, just accidentally.
Oh, now we have an update.
Okay, an update. Rita has 405.
405.
And Fred is up to 28.
Right.
Right. And I just accidentally, I was holding signs today, and Fred's campaign manager, a woman who actually lives in Stoughton, I was talking to her for a while, and she said that they thought they would do better with write-in than with handing out stickers to people, that had some technical problems. But as you can see, a write-in candidate,
It's very difficult.
just, so it's a giant gap there.
Yeah.
But, so Rita is winning in a brand new district that was created, right? And actually doesn't come into existence until January.
Right.
And that is a majority-minority district also.
Now we're still waiting. Results are coming in, but here now we have the governor, lieutenant governor's race, and here we see these are our first figures in. in terms of the vote. And we see Jeff Deal has 84. Maura Healy has 390. And Kevin Reed and Peter Everett, 4 votes. Now, I was surprised in terms of Kevin Reed and Peter Everett. It was, again, you addressed this earlier, in terms of people who get the necessary signatures to actually go on the ballot. And so many times we don't see them until they're there. But again, no publicity, no TV ads, no posters, no campaign workers.
Occasionally, this can really alter events. Now, this isn't in Massachusetts, but one of the most watched races in the nation is between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker in Georgia. And there is a virtually unknown third-party candidate who is expected to take, since that race is so close, at least they're predicting that he'll take enough votes so that neither one of them will actually go over 50%, and there will be a runoff election in Georgia in December. And that was the case 2 years ago, where Warnock and John Ossoff both won in runoff elections. So if it's a close election, that third-party candidate can skewer the results. But in this case,
no,
it's not. It's not going to be.
It's not going to make an
Now
impact.
here, Attorney General Andrea Campbell. She would not be the first woman Attorney General, because of course there's Martha Coakley in the state of Massachusetts, but
she will be the first woman of color.
First woman of color.
And we have James R. McMahon III, 84 votes. Andrea Campbell, 384.
84.
And one write-in.
Write-in, yeah. And about write-ins, you can write your own name in for any of these things. We were talking about it. There's a school committee race that we'll get to, and there was an open position where nobody ran for the Southeast Regional School Committee member from West Bridgewater, since they're in that consortium. And I was thinking, if I wrote my name in, would I be the school committee member? I don't think so, because I don't live in West Bridgewater, but somebody could write their name in
and become.
Yeah, and be that school committee member, which isn't the greatest thing to be.
All right, here we are.
Here we are.
Yes,
yeah.
Now we have Tony Branch with 218 votes, and Jamie Hodges with 76, and I think it's
Magali Finney.
Yeah.
Right.
With 71.
Now, this is a very interesting race, because Tony Branch, who's pretty well known because he's a community activist, pretty well known in Brockton, has been the school committee member for a while.
And also chair.
And he's currently the chair of the Southeast Regional School Committee membership. And a thing to keep in mind, if you're not really familiar with regional schools, is that there'll be, I work sometimes at Blue Hills, and there's 8 towns. And they each send, since they're all about the same size, they each send 1 rep to the school committee. In Southeast Regional School Committee, and Brockton is a member of this, is one of the cities, but there's also East Bridgewater, Easton, Stoughton, and West Bridgewater, plus Brockton. Now I believe, but I can't verify it at this moment, that Brockton has 2 votes on this, doesn't it? Because of its relative size.
Because of the size, and I'm trying to, I don't know if it's been changed, but I thought that was the case. We need to fact check that.
Right, now in the Southeast Regional School, which is down in a high school, and it's a Voc Tech school, is down in Easton on Route 106. Brockton's students are more than a majority of the total amount because it's relative to the size. So you take the other 4 towns there and you add their populations together, Brockton has a much larger population than all 4 of them together. So the amount of kids that will be accepted is relative to the size. And I believe that since we're at least twice any of the others in size, in population, I believe we have 2 school committee members there.
I think you're right, and like you with Blue Hills, I've taught at substitute taught at Southeastern. Wonderful, wonderful school.
Yeah,
and a good
those
district.
places are amazing. The VOTEC schools, particularly in this day and age, where you always hear about there's a shortage of actual skilled labor. One of my students in the citizenship class, she was saying her son is in Southeast Regional and he's studying to be a plumber. And back in the day, you'd say, oh, plumber, well, if you couldn't go to college. But she knows, and the kid knows, that this is a good, high-paying job with tremendous demand. So these...
Well, this is, I'm glad you brought that up because this is critical. We have a situation where many people think, you need a degree. But there are vocations and jobs out there that pay very well. And so if you're an electrician or a plumber, it's a wonderful job. Construction worker, masonry, hairdresser. These are all skills, and the pay is commensurate with the job. And many times they do better financially than those with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. So it's what you passionate about.
Right.
But in the past, they were kind of looked down upon.
Now, in this race here that Tony was in, I don't know if you can flip back to that, the Southeast region. I think it's a particularly interesting race because there was an attempt by other members of the Southeast Regional School Committee to oust Tony from the chairmanship. And so he is somewhat of a controversial figure. Now, Jamie Hodges, who is a young woman, decided to run against him. And but then somehow toward the end, a woman, Magali Pinney, who I've never met, not that I've met everybody in Brockton, but I've never met, and she has 71 votes and Jamie has 76. And even if, I don't even think, they may not combined be able to top Tony's thing, but having 2 opponents certainly advantages him in splitting any anti-Tony Branch votes.
Right.
So, okay.
The next one.
Yeah, thank you.
Slide.
Could
Thank
go
you.
Bill Galvin one.
Here we go.
There we go.
Okay, William Francis Galvin, another BC grad. His daughter went to BC, Bridget, his daughter. 388 votes compared to Rayla Campbell with 70 votes and Juan Sanchez with 11. No write-ins at this time. Again, Mr. Galvin is, if he wins, he'll be the longest-serving Secretary of State. And I must say...
Of any in the nation.
Of any in the
Not
nation.
Not just in
Thank
Massachusetts.
You. Yeah, in all 50 states.
Right.
And which is it's unbelievable. And he is, when you look at the record and how he assiduously goes about his job, he's just a person to be admired. He lives in the Brighton section of Boston, and he as a history teacher.
Yeah.
And my teaching over the years, I mean, it seems like he was there since I started teaching.
Oh yeah.
And so the archives in Dorchester, a lot of the materials that I wanted concerning Native Americans or African Americans, I could actually go to the office, request, things would be sent. I mean, he does the job is just he's just, again, particularly. I can't say enough. I think it's difficult for anyone
Yeah.
to oppose him because, and we're going to get to this when we talk about Cruz, in terms of district attorney. When you have somebody who's been in a position for a while and does their job well and responds to constituents, it's very difficult to unseat him or her.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Galvin being around forever, I was living in Brighton in the 70s and I was teaching in Watertown, and Bill Galvin was a state rep from Brighton back then. And then I think he's been 36 years or something like that, and he's going for more.
Now we have Deborah Goldberg
Yeah.
with 398 and Christina Crawford. She's a Libertarian candidate with 48 votes, no write-ins.
Right, and the Republicans didn't put anybody up against her at all. And also, there was no Democrat running against her in the primary.
Right.
So she's been.
But here's another thing about her, what people say about her. I don't know her personally, but just, again, a consummate professional, really, really does a good job, is just full of new ideas.
Right, yeah. And, yeah, so, I mean, she's obviously going to win here.
Oh, here we are with the
This
auditors.
is the most interesting, statewide, the most interesting race coming in. Now, the other women that we talked about are expected to win big, like 64% to 36% or something like this. This was considered on polls that I saw even yesterday to be a 10-point race, with DeZoglio, having the advantage of the 10 points predicted against Anthony Amore. Anthony Amore is the only statewide Republican that Charlie Baker has endorsed. This is sort of inside baseball, but there's been note that Charlie Baker has appeared at a number of rallies and fundraisers for Amore, but has not done any television or radio ads for him.
Right.
And, makes you wonder why, but whatever.
Yeah, now here's the thing. He's the only candidate that Governor Baker has supported. But with Diana DeZoglio, she is also known to be a pistol.
Yeah.
And if you think about back in terms of Speaker of the House, DeLeo, remember the incident when she called him out?
Oh, yeah. Right.
So she's again a formidable opponent.
Right. She started out as an aide in the state house and then got elected to state rep and now is a state senator, and looks like, these are very early returns. Also, we don't know where these returns are coming from.
Right, and these are very early and they're only preliminary. I want our viewers to realize these are only preliminary results. So more and more will come in.
Now, with 3 other write-ins, thank you, with 3 other write-ins, it's possible that they, in a very close race, they could combined, have this. But you do not, it is not like the Georgia race where you have to win a majority.
Right.
It's a plurality.
Right.
So it's whoever gets the most votes. Even if these guys all split it and one got 21%, and the others had 19 or whatever, that 21% person would still win. So we don't know where these numbers come from. Anthony Amore could have, his strongholds could not, might not have.
Now suppose we had ranked choice.
Yeah.
How would that affect?
Well, with those numbers so small.
But
with those numbers so small, the ranked choice, that's another one of those. We had that on the ballot, right? And I voted for it. It didn't win, right? We don't have ranked choice.
I don't think we have ranked choice.
And it was a good idea, but...
Well, now, Maine does.
Maine has ranked choice, and it has affected... It works really well if you have 3 candidates, once you start, and then maybe even 4, but you and I did a program on that, and I tried to do the math spreadsheet with 10 candidates,
and it was
bad. There are better solutions to this. You know, but that's ranked choice. That's not really what we're talking about tonight.
Okay, and we are going to go to break, and
We'll have more numbers and more contacts, so stay with us.
stay tuned. Welcome back. We are discussing and giving results of the 2022 midterm elections here in the city of Brockton, and we're glad to have you join us. I am, my co-host is Steve Thomasy. I'm Willie Wilson Jr. And again, these results that we're sharing with you are actually just the results for the city of Brockton. So I want you to realize that, and they're all preliminary. So again, as they come in, we will share them with you, but it's just, they're coming directly from the polls for the city of Brockton only, a city of 106,000 people, and we'll be talking about some of those voters later. Right now on the screen, thank you very much, Representative in Congress, Stephen F. Lynch, with 729 votes, Democrat, and Robert G. Burke at this point, all preliminary, with 138 votes, and we have 5 write-ins.
Right, and Steve Lynch has been there. I believe he succeeded Joe Moakley, right?
I believe so too.
And they live in the same neighborhood of
In
South
South
Boston. And it was kind of like an automatic transition, kind of like when Tom Kennedy, sort of passed it on to Jerry Cassidy, who worked for him. Lynch was attached to Moakley's apparatus. So, and Steve Lynch is in that cadre of Democrats who describe themselves now as moderates. You're all aware that within the Democratic Party there's some split, particularly you can see it in the Congress, in the House of Representatives, between the so-called progressives and the people that are identifying themselves as moderates. And that's played a big role in some other states. A good example would be Ohio, where a rep named Tim Ryan, who's a Democrat, is running against this author guy endorsed by J.D. Vance, who is endorsed by Trump. And Tim Ryan has been running hard against being labeled as one of these liberal Nancy Pelosi Democrats. And Steve Lynch is in that particular camp. There's a story which I don't think is apocryphal.
In terms of Steve Lynch is as a moderate as opposed to a progressive.
As a progressive, and there's sort of a thing where there's a story where early when Nancy Pelosi became Speaker of the House, a couple of elections ago when the Democrats took the House back, she was telling basically Steve Lynch to vote for some particular measure, And the story is that this is right at the beginning when she was speaker, he said, I don't work for you, lady. I work for my district back in Massachusetts. So it was separate, even that early, separating himself out from the accusation of being one of these liberals. So he's not in the camp with Ayanna Pressley, even though their districts are right next to each other.
Okay, now we have the councilor, 2nd District, Robert
Jubenville,
Right. 372 as a Democrat, as opposed to Dasha Vedera, who's a Republican, with 80 votes.
It's interesting here. I myself even forgot that this was going to be on the ballot when I went in to vote. I've met him because he shows up to the Democratic caucuses at Brockton High School every February, and he comes, and he's our. So there you.
I was going to say, you need to explain
may have
what
heard
a council
of the Governor's Council, and it's one of the seemingly more obscure elected positions in the state. And if you ask, I don't know, 90 people, 88 would say they never even heard of it, and the other 2 would be hard-pressed to say what they do. But it's an important position because it passes on particularly any judge that is nominated by the governor. So like for the Supreme Court of the United States, the president nominates and the Senate passes allows that person to go in. But in Massachusetts, it's not the state Senate that would do it. It would be the Governor's Council. And there are, 9 districts maybe?
Right.
And these people are pretty faceless, except for occasionally when there's a judge, district judge or a state Supreme Court judge who's nominated by the governor, they get to pass on it.
Well, they also oversee, for example, notaries, and there are other duties that they have. I'm a notary, and so they're within their purview. They do other things, So it's not just the judges,
right?
Yeah,
they have to give approval to.
Ooh, this is I wanted to. Excuse me, the interruption.
Yeah.
I wanted to. This is an excellent graphic that the BCA. Staff had put together, and this is information from the Brockton Elections Commission and worldpopulationreview.com, but I love the breakdown. This I was looking at this earlier, the voter registration in Brockton, and then we have the voter registration in Brockton, the establishment. I'm staring. I think it's better if I just go through the graphics in the folder because
We're
I'm
older
straining.
guys. But it is the point Willie's making is these are really stunning numbers. We have 100 and the figure that they had in their book was 108,000 people. So that might be the latest official count in Brockton. And during the last census, we finally got over 100,000 people. Even though we expected that we had this for many years, we were able to count enough to get up over the 100,000, put you on another level of aid. But anyway, out of that 108,000, it says here 61,893 registered voters in Brockton. That's a stunning number. Because if you walk around here, you know that it's a majority-minority city now, the only one in New England with over 100,000 people. It's a city, not a town. And that's a lot of registered voters. Yet when we have an election, particularly appalling, I thought, was last year's city elections, the mayor, the city council, the school. We had 19%, less than 1 in 5 of that 61,000. And then you look at who are the 46,000 who are not registered to vote. Well, those are people ineligible, largely, children under 18, immigrants who are not yet citizens, so can't register to vote. So, I was surprised by this number, the 61,000. That means that just about everybody, I think, who's eligible to vote is registered, right? And I have worked on voter registration drives. The 2 times that Barack Obama ran for president, there was tremendous amount of people registering to go vote, but a lot of people voted then for Obama, and the second time was way back in 2012, and maybe haven't voted since then. So that's a really big number.
I love this graphic. Now, the other thing we haven't talked about is the effect that the independent voters have, the impact they have on elections.
Yeah. And so if you look at these numbers here, if people are, I guess they're watching on the screen too, so 27,600 something Democrats, and then 3,479 Republicans, a tiny number. And then I'm not sure what the purple, a third party, so maybe libertarians or green or something, that's a couple hundred.
Yeah.
But the bigger number, and this is the case throughout Massachusetts, not just in Brockton, what are called unenrolled.
Right,
People who choose, when you go to register to vote, they ask you, do you want to register in a party? And the growing trend, and it's particularly strong amongst young people, is that people say we're not in either party. And they think of themselves as independent. The actual title is unenrolled. You have not joined. You haven't enrolled in either party. And this is the case. You know, it'll be hard to break these down. I know when I go to vote, I see at least, you know, the white people that are voting are older people, right? And they are probably registered in a party because back in the day, you joined the party probably that your parents were in if they were voters. It was very common. But more and more people are turned off by party politics, and the reaction is, let me just be unenrolled, right? You know, I don't know what the long-term effect is. They're talking about this, about the national election, that the key to all of it is the unenrolled voters. Where are they going to go? Are they going to be with the Democrats or the Republicans? And it's hard to, you have, like I work in the Democratic politics in the city, and you got a list of all the Democrats, and you can actually find them, you know, and say, oh, you know, this person has Democratic values or whatever, you know. But unenrolled, you know, they don't even talk to you. If you go door to door and they say, well, we're unenrolled, we're undecided. They're not going to really talk to pollsters. So nationally, where the polls are all over the place, people are saying that a lot of people don't even want to talk to pollsters anymore. And I think that the unenrolled people feel that that's one of their privileges of being enrolled.
Well, I think
we're not going to tell you.
Well, I was unenrolled and I was an independent. I was a Democrat, then I was unenrolled, and then, you know, and so you like to have that flexibility. But this morning when I voted, you know, I completed every third voter. There was an exit poll.
Oh, there was?
Yeah.
I didn't see that where I was.
Where I was, and
you
so
voted Hancock?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And so, like, you know, and it is so important, you know, and they explained, and somebody said, oh, I'll do that. And he said, oh, no, it's every third. He said, you know, this is an official exit poll. And I think, you know, unenrolled people like to have that freedom of going one way or another. I think what happens is, with the issue with Trump and all of the racism, I had to go Democrat, you know. Now we're coming back to District Attorney, Plymouth County, and here we are. These are preliminary results. Timothy J. Cruz, Republican, 479 votes. Rashawn Hall, Democrat, 1,066 votes. And one write-in. I am surprised.
Well, except that, as we said,
They're
these
preliminary.
are from Brockton.
Right, and that doesn't
Right.
include the towns.
So he is from Brockton. He's a person of color, and the people in the city who you talk to, door to door, whatever, believe that there should be a different attitude toward who's brought to trial, right? What prosecutions are done, how the district attorney judges the success of their role. And there are people in the minority community that believe that Cruz kind of makes a living on arrests. And his whole mantra throughout this whole thing is protecting. But protecting from whom? Throughout the country, the Republicans have been talking about growing crime, right? Growing crime, and they talk about the cities. And growing crime in the cities, that's where the Democrats are. But that's also where the large numbers of minority people are. So it doesn't take any kind of genius to understand dog whistles.
Right.
What one thing means. So if you live in some place far away from where minority people live, right? You're a white person, and this guy is going to protect you from that crime that exists in the city. Who's committing that crime in the city? So, that's not the point of view maybe of people who are outside of Brockton, but the show is talking to people in Brockton who probably understand what I mean. Now, some people did vote for Cruz. I was holding signs this morning early after I voted at Kennedy School, and the firefighters, you probably had firefighters at your poll. They're all over the place. And I expect them to hold the Democrat signs. So they always got the Cassidy and Brady signs out there like crazy. But they were some of the guys were holding Cruz signs today. Who's the Republican? And what's going on? And it's all white firefighters. I'm sure there's...
Well, this is something we want to come back to, because we're going to come back to question number 4.
Yeah.
And so here, the city of Brockton is the only city in Plymouth County. So Cruz is district attorney for the entire county. And so, again, what is it about, what does he do in terms of attracting people in the towns? What is he doing effectively in the towns as opposed to the city? There's so many things to discuss. And, you could almost have a one, session
and
on
we'll have
that.
to see. Now, talking to one of Rassan Hall's, actually the manager of his campaign today, I just happened to meet, she was monitoring things at South Junior High where I was holding a sign, and she was saying that they were stronger in some of, maybe the more, I guess we call some of the more affluent communities, Hingham, Duxbury, Cohasset, some of those places like that might be, wealthier white people, more educated, maybe more liberal,
Here we are with the county
talk about
commissioner.
this. This is a really interesting race, even though if you ask people about it, they would say, we have county commissioners?
Right.
A lot of people don't. Now, this is in Brockton. Alex Bezanson lives in Abington.
Right.
Right. And his actual place of business is right across the border from the Brockton line. And you see Alex Bezanson around.
You see him around. I've heard good things. I know you know him. You've worked on some things.
Right.
And so now we have Sandra M. Wright, who's the Republican, at 90 votes. I don't know where her residence is.
Well, she lives in Bridgewater. For another Brockton cable show, I actually interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. I had never heard of her. If she wins here, I did research before I interviewed her, but if she wins now, will be her 4th term, and she's already done 12 years as the Brockton County Commissioner. She lives in Bridgewater. And she worked in hospital administrator. She was also on Bridgewater Town Council, and she's on the Bridgewater Board of Health. She worked EMTs And
Okay, so you're telling me she's currently the commissioner?
she's currently the commissioner. I had never heard her name. This is a real trivia question for you. There are 3 county commissioners, right? Can you name the 3 sitting county commissioners?
No, I can't.
And that's the thing. And I couldn't before I researched for this. Now, I knew Greg Hanley because he's a Democrat and he hangs around in Brockton. Okay, so if you go to Democratic events, Greg Hanley shows up. Then there's Jared, I'm losing his name now, Valenzuela, something like that. Not Valenzuela,
Okay, I've seen the name.
or something, right? And Sandra Wright, who's been there for a long, long time.
Now, what do they do?
Oh, well, they do, okay, these are questions I asked her. There are 68 employees. So they run the 3 courthouses.
Mm-hmm.
There's one here in Brockton, one in Wareham, one in Hingham. So they run those. The Registry of Deeds that John Buckley runs, right? They fund that. And they oversee properties that are owned by the county. They don't deal with legal matters. So they don't run the sheriff's department. They don't run the county prison, right? Each of the counties has a prison, and they just show Joe McDonald.
Now here's the only thing that I knew. For example, the mosquito spraying that was requested, that comes under their purview.
Right.
Now, other than that, this is very interesting.
Well, they became really well known only in the last 2 years because they applied for federal relief money, and they got a really big chunk of federal relief money, $9 million. These 3 commissioners got to distribute to cities and towns in Plymouth County. And this was anyway, we can
we'll come
talk
back.
about that.
All right,
Back to question 1.
Now here we have the latest in terms of the ballot. This particular ballot question would add an additional 4% state income tax to those who make over $1 million a year, with funds from this tax going to public education and transportation. The yes votes here in the city of Brockton now 1,019, and the no votes 654.
This is an interesting one because I personally would prefer a graduated income tax, but they call this a fair share amendment. And by the way, the graduated income tax has, because I looked this up, 4 times been on the ballot in Massachusetts and lost overwhelmingly each time.
Well,
because if there was another step, say 6% over the 5%, and if you and I made over $75,000, we would go to 6%. Everybody is against this because they don't want to pay more taxes.
And that's why they came up with this.
This is a Robin Hood amendment.
These
are the
people who actually, many of these people had backed the graduated tax, and now they're working on this particular.
Right, because they can get this because I go door to door in Brockton here, and I didn't talk to anybody who I thought would make $1 million. So we would both laugh, right, and say, well, we don't make $1 million. We'll never pay this. We don't even get close to $1 million. And so voting for it, I'm almost surprised, since this is a Brockton, only Brockton numbers, that there's, that's not that big a gap.
No.
654 people voted not to increase the taxes on millionaires.
You know why? Because I think the TV advertising has been very effective. So people are thinking, oh, these are average people that are saying no, and actually they're not. They're actually put by by the millionaires who don't want this.
Yeah, and okay. Now the question 2, the dental one, is winning 2-1, or that's almost 3-1.
Yes,
right.
1174 to 472 in terms of the no votes. Now again, this is 80, and this is really critical. Many people felt that when they did the percentages for the regular health insurance in terms of they should have addressed dental then, and somehow it slipped under under the microscope, and now there are even dentists, dental hygienists are for this because they've seen the insurance company tacking on all this, and it's not going to actual dental care.
Right.
So I'm glad I did vote yes on this myself.
I moved to Brockton in '85, and I started a dentist in '86. A guy had a private practice, and a couple of years ago he sold it. Now it's owned by a group in New York, and I talked to the dental hygienists, and they said,
they agree.
Yeah, they agree.
Question 3 would increase the maximum amount of alcohol licenses of any retailer to 7. All alcoholic beverages licenses and 12 wines, malts, and licenses. This would also disallow retailers to sell alcohol via means of automatic or self-serve checkout, as well as out-of-state ID as proof of age. Wow, I'm surprised. 509 for yes, and then 766 for no, which is saying we want to go with the status quo.
With the status quo, whatever that is. The only thing I can think about on here, because is that part. Somehow we don't want people from out of state coming in and using their IDs to buy liquor in my state. That's the only thing. I mean, I'm not, how New Hampshire advertises trying to suck people from Massachusetts to go up to New Hampshire to buy those liquor stores that are right across the border. They want out-of-staters, Massachusetts people, to buy their liquor, which is a little bit cheaper than this. But we're saying we don't want people. Is that there? I don't think it matters to me at all on that one. And usually I have strong feelings about stuff, but...
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the 4th question, and this is critical in terms of, when we talked about it earlier, the yes votes are 743, the no votes are 550. Now, this is a question that I'd like to really discuss, because the Massachusetts legislature has already approved this bill.
That's right.
And so what we're doing is, now there are some people that don't want it, and I have a problem as I've looked at data from the other 17 states that have already passed this. What's the reason here in Massachusetts that we don't want? I want to hear from those voters myself. What is it? And unfortunately, it has racial connotations and overtones due to the fact that many of these people are undocumented and so-called illegal.
Yeah, right. And they have documents. They're just not the type of documents that allow them to get green cards. And this only would require them to actually prove who they were. But it's important, I think, for our listeners to understand, if they don't already, that this question is different than the other 3. The other 3 add a new law if they pass. This one takes away a law previously passed by the state legislature, right? And the state legislature, the people who argue for this, are saying that this is a matter of safety. There are, and if you live in Brockton, you know people who are immigrants who are driving who don't have licenses. They've been in the country for years. They never got a green card for one reason or another. They go to work every day in a car, right? This car is uninsured. They don't have a license. If they get in an accident with you, right, you have no recourse against their insurance company. The police, when they stop them for whatever reason, don't in fact know who they are or where that person lives, right? So if they're given like a court appearance and they don't show up, well, where were they from, I mean, most of the police organizations support this because it's like almost like a no-brainer. It is advantageous pretty much to everybody.
Now, the argument that I've heard from the other side is this, because it's a license, that there's a fear that they will try to vote. But in fact, when we look at the statistics from the 17 other states, that's not the case.
No, they had almost...
So why, I don't understand the opposition.
See, I mean, throughout the country, Tucker Carlson calls it the Great Replacement, that there is a fear amongst a certain element that this country is changing, and it isn't the United States of our childhood, right? In 1960, when John Kennedy was elected president, and so older people, I can remember that. I was 12 years old. I was in a Catholic school in New York City, and we thought that was the greatest thing on earth. All right, thank you. But 88% of the people in the United States were white, right? 9% black, and then 3% other. And look at it now. By 2045, it's estimated that the white people will no longer be a majority in the country. But that's a weird statistic because it isn't like, so they'll be 48%. All right. But it's not like the other 52% are a single group
Right.
that's somehow going to oppress these white people,
Yeah.
Because it's Native Americans, African Americans, immigrant, African Americans, Hispanics of all different
Asians,
types,
yep.
Asians of all different types. I mean, it's like no threat whatsoever, but they create like this bogeyman kind of threat to somehow, so it's white Christian nationalism, that you hear about in more radical states. But, is there some element in people's private thinking about that? And it's not a simple thing.
Right.
It's not a simple thing.
Well, this is very interesting. We are going to break in 3 minutes, 1 minute. Okay.
I mean, we just know, people from outside of here, from whatever, and who have never been to like Brockton. And so have some sort of vision of what it's like, that it's, somewhat dangerous, because you drive around and there's all these people who aren't white people. It's like, it's just an odd sort of thing. But if you live in kind of isolated, or you're nervous
Yeah, exactly.
about how your neighborhood is changing.
Right. Yeah.
Why aren't you voting?
When you vote, you can do something about everything. At voteforyourlife.com, it's never been faster or easier to make a plan to vote.
Time is running out, but you still have the chance to use your power.
Check your registration and make sure your address on file is correct.
Find your state's deadlines, learn about local candidates, and request a ballot.
You'll be able to see where candidates stand on issues you care about.
Order a ballot request form to be mailed to you with prepaid postage,
allowing you to vote early, easily, and safely.
Make a plan to vote early by finding your nearest ballot drop box, in-person polling place, or local mailbox.
And this is where you rise, this is where you shine, this is where you become the greatest of all time. History in the making.
Vote for your life.
Welcome back. We have now 20 minutes until we finish, and so we had a glitch at City Hall. The computer had gone down, and so now we're going to be getting in some of the final numbers. So this phase will be lightning racks. Okay, we're looking at the governor, lieutenant governor. These are the results. 5,561 for Jeff Deal. 14, is that 14?
14,000, yeah.
14,063 for Maura Healy, and 303 for Kevin Reed. And then for write-in, we have 24 votes.
Right. And so, this is not unexpected. I was guessing that, Maura Healy might win in the state 2-1, and this is a little bit even more than 2-1. But of course, Brockton is a more democratic city than other places. So, yeah, and this graphic here shows the voting of independents in white. Thing to note is, of course, that the governor and lieutenant governor run together.
Right.
It's not separate, so it's like president and vice president.
Right.
There was a time when that wasn't true, but it caused some problems.
So now with that independent number, so
The last column is don't vote.
Don't vote. Oh, it's not independent. Didn't vote.
didn't vote.
Oh,
thank
okay.
you. Thank you for that correction. Good.
Oh.
Okay, and now we have the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell with 14,039 votes, and we have James McMahon III, 5,646 votes with 23 write-ins.
Right, and if this is only Brockton numbers, that is almost 3-1, but I'm really surprised that he got that many votes in the city. I don't know how many people could have told you, well, actually, who was running for Attorney General before this, but that seems like a really big number for him.
Okay.
I think, though, statewide, that this is going to be about what the spread's going to be.
Yeah. And then again, we have the graphics. Good.
But so many large...
Oh, here we are, Secretary of State Bill Galvin with 14,812 votes, Rayla Campbell with 4,476, and Juan Sanchez with 443, and we have 23 write-in votes. No surprise there.
Yeah.
And here is the graphic explaining that with the numbers.
Again, big numbers of people who were that was eligible to vote but did not
vote. Well,
vote.
here's the what can I just wish if we could get to a point where 80%, 90% people are voting. You don't even have to vote according to my. It would. I just think it's invested in the system. I think everything would run much better.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a question about the holiday. There's also the European model where they vote on weekends.
Yeah.
And it's a 2-day election. But the opportunities to vote, particularly the 2 weeks up the mall,
Yeah.
Those
are good.
Yeah, the mail-in ballots may be a little
Treasurer?
questioning.
Deborah Goldberg with 15,102. Christina Crawford with 3,335. And we have 75 write-ins for treasurer.
Yeah.
And then here we have the graphic again.
Now, you'll see a diminishing number of people voting, so that as you go down ballot, you get something called voter fatigue.
Right.
When people get to offices they never really heard of, they just don't vote for them.
Right.
Here we go.
Auditor. Okay. We have Anthony Amore with 5,235 and Diana DeZaglio with 12,568. Gloria A. Roca, Caballero Roca with 392. Dominic Giannone III, 652. Daniel Reek with 278. And we have 20 write-ins.
Right. So that's about, what is that, 1,300 votes, not for one of the two. Maybe Charlie Baker's endorsement is of some significance there. She's ahead significantly in Brockton. Once again, this is Brockton, other places.
We're going to see how it is statewide.
Yeah, have other demographics.
Okay, representative in Congress, Stephen F. Lynch with 14,748, and Robert G. Burke with 4,683 with 57 write-ins. And the graphic.
Right, and there isn't a single person who would bet on the other guy over Steve Lynch, so that's it.
Oh, okay, Councilor, 2nd District, Robert Jubenville, 13,943 as opposed to Dache Videra, 4,910 with a write-in of 25.
Right,
votes.
and this has to be just simply party line.
Right.
Right, for Democrat or Republican, because almost nobody that you meet could name the two candidates
Right.
for this.
Okay, Senator in the General Court, 2nd Plymouth and Norfolk District, Michael D. Brady, 14,988 votes, and Jim Gordon with 4,460 with 39 write-in votes.
Yeah, I mean, and the only good thing about this is that, we should have somebody opposing. Gordon wasn't really going to have a chance. I looked him up to research today. I couldn't find anything.
Now we have, I didn't know, 9th Plymouth District, Jerry Cassidy with 3,433 votes, and Larry Novak with 1,345.
Yeah, again, it has to be party line, because it's like, nobody dislikes Jerry Cassidy. There's people who might vote for him because they vote for Republicans,
Right.
not Democrats.
Good, and then this is the graphic. Again,
Well, at least more people voted in this election than in other ones, but they all heard of Brady. Brady's got big name recognition.
okay, and now the 10th Plymouth District. This is, we talked about Michelle's
Right.
district.
And you're going to see a huge number
Right.
here on who didn't vote.
6,802 she had, and then there were 273 write-in votes.
Right, which means she had to get 274 votes to win. But look at that, 74, almost 75% of the people didn't vote because, she's not opposed by a Republican, and you never heard of the other person,
And here's Rita Mendes, former city councilor of Brockton, 4,918 votes, and the write-in votes were 483.
And actually, Fred Fontaine did better in this election. He got over 3 times as many votes, 3.5 times as many votes as he got the first time in the thing. So he did improve his standing tonight.
Okay, and now we have the votes for District Attorney. Timothy Cruz, 8,326. Rashawn Hall, 11,044 with 25 write-in votes. And there's the graphic.
Right. So Rasan is ahead in Brockton. He needed a huge advantage in Brockton.
And he did get that. Here we have Joseph Daniel McDonald Jr., 11,826 votes with 618 write-ins. There's the graphic for that. The sheriff of Plymouth County. And now the county commissioner. We talked in detail about Alex A. Bezonson, who was a Democrat. He has 12,252 votes, as opposed to Sandra Wright with 6,559 votes, and there were 25 write-ins.
And it's interesting. 2 nights ago, you might have got this robocall from Mayor Robert Sullivan endorsing Alex Bezanson. And so Sullivan's very popular. And if people didn't hear about this, they might have been influenced by that.
Southeastern Regional School Committee in Brockton. These are the final votes. Tony Branch, 9,862. Jamie Hodges, 3,590. And Magali Penny, 3,070.
Right.
With the 72 write-in votes.
And it turns out Magali Penny was not a spoiler because both of their votes combined was not more than Tony's.
Right.
So, so he won that kind of flat out. And this is an interesting thing. I don't know
For the towns.
anybody there. Now, there were 2,723 write-in votes for the West Bridgewater School Committee position on the Southeast Regional. This isn't West Bridgewater
so
School.
So
somebody has to win. Presumably, the one with the most
would
write-in votes
would be the.
But we'll read about that maybe in the Enterprise in a couple days. Yeah.
And then that's what the graphics look like.
And look at look how many people didn't vote in that. Okay.
Oh, the final on the vinyl.
Well, this is only Brockton.
This is just Brockton, city of Brockton. Okay. Question 1. Yes votes 10,784. No votes 7,676. I'm still surprised.
Yeah, the people
with
are
the
voting
number
no
of no votes.
Because other people are going to get taxed, not you, and supposedly it's going to go into your public transportation and your schools. But
I think there's some distrust there in terms of, will it really?
Yeah.
But I think there's enough push for citizens to see that it actually does what it's supposed to. Question 2, 13,178 votes for yes, 5,129 no.
right, without a detail. The funny thing about dental insurance is that people don't have dental insurance the way they have health insurance.
Well, I think that's going to change.
Yeah.
Question 3, yes, 7,087 votes. No, 10,969. See, so I'm wondering if this is going to be, if this is indicative of how the state will go.
Yeah, don't know.
We'll have to
This
see.
is just like a hard one.
Yeah. Question 4. Whoa, good. 10,092 for yes, 8,273 for no. I'm still surprised with that no vote, and I would like to know those no voters. What is it, particularly that bothers you or troubles you? There's a graphic for all 4 questions. 1, 2, 3, and 4.
So these are the, okay, yeah. And so, this is the last one, ballot questions.
Yep.
So anyway, we're glad to have spent some time with you tonight. It turned out, just like last time, to be a little longer than we thought we were going to be here, and that was because of the computer glitch. Anybody who's watching this will probably be watching it later. And you're also watching on television stations what the statewide votes are. So
Right.
we were
And-
only talking about local,
Brockton. This
local
is strictly
politics
Brockton
here tonight.
with
Right.
61,893 registered voters. So that's what we were looking at for this evening.
Right.
And
But it looked like we had about a 30%, just roughly, generally a 30% turnout.
that's right. Well, 31 maybe.
Yeah, something like that. It was oddly, but better than the city races last year.
Yes.
I think that if the governor's race had been tighter, there would have been more turnout. So we're done. We wish you a good Thanksgiving and a wonderful Christmas holiday. And hope you don't have to shovel too much snow this winter.
And again, keep track of the national contest this evening.
Yeah.
A lot of things. I'm one of those, as both of us are history teachers, and we do feel democracy is on the ballot. And we're looking forward to here in the city of Brockton working together, regardless of party or affiliation, to make Brockton a better place. Thank you for joining us. I'm Willie Wilson Jr.
Steve Thomasy.
And we do wish our general host, who is Corey Dolgan, who is ill.
We're hoping this is very
he's going to
brief
be better.
illness. Yeah.
Thank you.